Welcome in, everybody, to a Monday edition of Birds 365. Back for another week of shows here on Birds 365. I hope everybody had a great 4th of July weekend. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Monday morning, brother? Back for another full week as we get closer to training camp, John. Just a couple of weeks out now, bro.
Yeah, man. What are we? 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks away from reporting day. So it is coming up quick. Coming up quick.
Yeah, 16 days out, John, from July 22nd, 17 days out from July 23rd. And then what do we got until September 4th? That's the real question. I think
The anxiety is building.
I think we're under, what are we under? 60 days now for the September 4th?
Woo,
59 days. John, 59 days until the opener. 59.
Yeah. Boy, it's quick.
I can see the excitement oozing out of you, John.
Yeah. Like I said, man, this creeped up on. They're in camp a little bit earlier than normal. Yeah, it's funny, and obviously they played as long as you could possibly play. So it's going to be interesting. That's probably going to be one of the stories that nobody thinks about, few think about, but the turnaround is just insane. From winning the Super Bowl and getting right back to it. That's the most impressive part about the Kansas City Chiefs, that part of it. To go that far, and New England did it for many years with a little respite, but for teams that go there a lot. And the Eagles have turned into one of those teams that, 3 and 8 years is pretty impressive. And, all you have to do is look at the seasons after Super Bowl 52 and Super Bowl 57 and see how difficult it is. And one of the reasons it's so difficult, a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Attrition being number one, I would still say, but schedule, generally a first place schedule. But then also that, everybody else gets a big head start for the most part. While you continue to play and try to fight through things. And that head start could be, strategy, just getting guys healthy. This week I'm doing training camp previews, offensive line specifically. I mean, I think Landon Dickerson's going to be fine. I think Cam Jurgens are going to be fine, but they were hurt at the end of last year.
And they went longer into the season, as you pointed out, and they're starting earlier than most teams at their training camp. So no doubt about it. Johnny Mac, how was your 4th of July weekend, brother? All good?
Yeah. Nondescript, which is good in my world.
No lost fingers?
No lost fingers. No JPP style accidents. Yeah, I said last week, I'm not a fireworks guy because I'm a dog guy. So never really got into fireworks that much.
Yeah, I've never been into them, period, end of sentence. But hope everybody had a great 4th of July weekend. It was a beautiful weekend, a great weather really all throughout the area if you're in the area. So I'm sure everybody had a great weekend. Great to see everybody in here. Everybody's going to start trickling in because we are getting closer to training camp. We're 2 weeks away, everybody. So
not for Jeff Kerr, by the way. Calling out my buddy Jeff Kerr.
Oh, yeah, you're calling out Jeff. Jeff canceled on us today, everybody.
He didn't cancel. He's on vacation, which is, everybody needs a vacation. I have no problem with that. But I get a text at like 10:30 at night. Come on, Jeff. Come on, buddy. No, but yeah, he does.
Jeff gives us enough time, so we're happy for him to get away. Good stuff for Jeff Kerr, but we will not be talking to him today. For those who do love the Jeff Kerr segment, which many of you do, I certainly love.
I like because it takes some of the heat off me. I like
it. Jeff did take some heat off you. He came in. He had some people to shit on every day. It didn't matter. We didn't know who it could be, but it was always somebody. So Jeff Kerr always brought that to the show. Good stuff for Jeff. Well, we'll talk to him probably next week as we'll be another week closer to camp at that point. We got plenty of stuff to talk about today. Good to see Tony, Dank Bird Gang, Sonny Buckets, Mike Fittery, Deshay's in here. Drew, Paulie, Bird Gang Girl, what's going on? Takeem Hilton, what's up, brother? Appreciate all of you guys for being here. Don't forget to hit the like button on the show today. It's one of the best things you guys can do to help us grow. And we want to obviously have another big season here on Birds 365 with the 2025 season. B-Mo, good to see you, brother. Johnny Mac, let's get right back into it, man. We closed up on Thursday before the 4th of July. We had a great show on Thursday, but on the top 25 list, we closed out at number 12, and it was Cam Jurgens. And I thought that was a pretty good spot for him, but you're now in the territory of kind of pick your poison. There's so many good players on this football team, and you have teased that you are not very happy. Player that landed at number 11, and I now agree with you very much so because of who I see is in front of him. I think he could easily jump the other two guys that we have here listed today. Maybe not the second one, but easily should jump number 10. He didn't. He's at number 11. John, the floor is yours. We're at number 11 on our countdown. Who is number 11 on the top 25 Eagles from Johnny Mack and Ed Kratz?
Zack Baun. Zack Baun. Yeah, I'm not happy with that.
Yeah. First team All-Pro, and he's 11, John. I mean, or 12, John. 11. I mean, that's low.
Catch and strays. Jeff Catch and strays. My buddy Ed Kratz catch and strays here because it ain't because of me. He's 11. I had him at number 7, I believe.
We're making enemies today, John.
I know. No, but I mean, you got to stand behind your work, and I'm going to try to get out on this week to explain this. Look, everybody does this differently. I always say my description is, who does their job the best. The Eagles had the number 1 defense in the NFL last year. They had 1 first-team All-Pro. They had 1 guy who was a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. We all talk about the Eagles' defense, and everybody says Jalen Carter, the best player. He's the most talented player. The best player by far last season, which, by the way, ended up with a Super Bowl, was Zack Baun. Period. End of sentence. And I had him at 7, and I thought, man, should I really put him this low? But there's so many good players, and and I always laughed at disrespect. And ultimately, this is a list, and our list is like anybody else's list. It's just 2 people's opinions meshed together. So turn the page if you don't like it. So I'm not upset, but I think it's silly that Zack Baun is at 11. Coming off.
Where did Ed have him on his list? If you had him at 7, get to 11. Ed did. Is he at 15?
Well, he was 5 spots lower, so he was at 12, I guess. 12. Which is and he ended up at 11. There's a lot of good players on this team. We started with 12. Cam Jurgens. Everybody on this list is good from this point forward. Really good. So you can nip and tuck, but the 2 rookies specifically who are going to be above them. I mean, upside projection, maybe down the road. Right now,
based on 2024, certainly not better than he was.
No. Again, 1 for first team All-Pro on defense. 1 finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. Now, you can say this is what Cooper DeJean is going to become, or this is what Quinyon Mitchell is going to become, but that's projection. And you can say what Zack Baun did in the first 5 seasons of his career in New Orleans, but he didn't play. So, I kind of blame that on them for not realizing, hey, this guy's pretty athletic. This guy's pretty instinctive. Why didn't they give him a chance? That's something they have to deal with. And maybe he falls flat on his face. I don't see it for those reasons. He's still young enough, and people look at his age, and he's one of the older players on defense because he spent 5 years doing relatively nothing. So he is a little bit older than the rest of the guys, but he also has very little tread off the tire from the perspective of those first 5 seasons. It's not like he's playing 1,000 snaps like he played last year, all of those seasons, where you have some, and that's when you look at the Eagles All-Pro on the other side of the football. They had one first-team All-Pro. That's Saquon Barkley. That's some of your concerns with him. Well, not only did he have the 482 touches last year, but he had all that, and those were difficult touches that we now know with the New York Giants because they didn't block for him. Those were difficult touches. So he doesn't have that. But, to me, the best comparison was Zack Baun was the Saquon Barkley of the defense.
Yeah, I think you're right when you say that. I don't think that's a reach at all.
And yeah, I can't put him at number 11, but that's where he ended up. I honestly thought I put him too low. At 7.
Number 7. I mean, and when you hear 7, you think, yeah, I want him higher. But then you start listing out the names, and I can see why you got him at number 7, just based on how many good, obviously talented players there are on the team. A.J. Brown, Lane Johnson. I mean, there's a lot of great players. So that's a little more understandable. Eddie K, I love you, brother, for listening, but I got to side with McMullen here. How do you get him down there at 12?
Yeah.
I don't know how Eddie Kratz had ended up there. One of my favorite, by the way, one of my favorite, John, responses from Baun this year was when you were asking him about, he didn't have a lot of tread off the tires, but the workload was way up, and he's like, "You worried about me?"
Yeah. It was funny because he didn't even realize, like, he surpassed his career high in snaps very early in the season because he didn't play much in New Orleans. And I'm like, asking about conditioning and playing all those snaps because he was the 3-down linebacker. And the rare time the Eagles play dime, he's the one who stays on the field. So he never left the field. And he's like, you worried about me? It didn't affect him at all. And probably because one of the reasons why is he didn't have that 5 years of mileage built up on the odometer, even though he played 5 years in the NFL. It was mainly just a special teams player, occasionally some snaps here and there. So, yeah, I mean, look, everybody on this list is good. The Eagles from, I said 1 through 17 on this list are the best team in football from a talent perspective. And then you have sort of the drop off to the second tier. So nobody on this list is bad. But even though it's my own list, and I hate the term disrespectful, this is disrespectful.
Johnny Mac takes it. So John does not discriminate. He takes a shit on his own list. Well done. Well done by Johnny Mac there. We're going to get to the top 10 today, too. We're going to run down number 10 and number 9. I got 9. I got a couple more questions on Zack Baun, and I want to refresh your guys' memory. As John points out, really the list got impressive at 17. 17 was Jordan Davis. Number 16 was Nakobe Dean. Number 15 was Reed Blankenship. Number 14 was Nolan Smith. Number 13 was Dallas Goedert. Number 12 was Cam Jurgens. And then number 11, you have Zack Baun coming in. John, how does Zack Baun try and get as close to, I'm not going to say duplicate or replicate, but get as close to what he did last year? Just like we talked about Saquon, that's a tough thing to go back and do. The odds are against you to go back and run for 2,500 yards. Well, the odds are probably against Zack Baun to go back and be another first-team All-Pro. It doesn't mean he can't do it, just that the odds aren't in his favor. What do you think he has to come back and do this year to try and get that honors again? And I think if he does that, that's a huge thing for the defense. The defense will obviously be much better with him playing at that level.
Well, I think it's easier to be first team all pro again than it is to match the numbers. Very similar to Saquon Barkley. Like Saquon could be first team all pro again, but he's not going to match the numbers. Same thing with Zack Baun. By the end of last season, it was ridiculous. He was making a play every day, every game, every game day. It was just special. What he was able to do. So if people want him to, force 5 fumbles, whatever it was, and the interceptions in the postseason, and even the PBUs, the splash plays, as they call on defense, he was making basically one every game. That probably is not, you're probably not going to be able to replicate that. Can you replicate being one of the two best linebackers in football? Not that that's easy. Fred Warner being the other one. It's ironic. It's like Fred Warner's like a month older than Zack Baun. It's crazy. To play that consistent level of football, that's what the Eagles think he's going to do. What that looks like, where he's going to play, who's going to play next to him. What is that going to look like? It was a nice, everything clicked with the Eagles defense last year. Everything clicked. The guys up front were great. They helped, as Zack Baun will be the first to tell you. Jakobi had a great season that people forget about, playing right next to him, which helped because he can play weak side and not have as many responsibilities when Jakobi was out there. When he has to go play middle linebacker, that probably curtails your big play ability a little bit. That alone could do it. But if he plays effective and where the Eagles think he is and why they paid him, then it'll be fine. But there's a lot of things that come into that, similar to everywhere on defense. How is the chemistry going to be?
Well, a lot of these players coming into year two, Jonathan Fangio. Well, year two with Vic Fangio. Obviously, they've played this style for a little bit, but year two with the godfather of the defense, I think that's obviously an advantage for a lot of these guys coming in. You even heard Zack talk about it on the Exciting Mike's podcast with Reed and Cooper, where he said, we're so much further ahead at this point of the year than where we were at this time last year. I'm paraphrasing, phrasing, but that's what Zack said. I think that's a big advantage for him. Now, that doesn't mean it's a guarantee he goes out there and gets first team All-Pro again, but I do think that helps the defense overall and helps him. Because remember, he's going to step up. He's got a bigger role coming in this year, obviously. Signed a $51 million contract this offseason. He is now a leader of the defense, John, versus a guy that, broke out last year.
Well, he's got more on his plate. I don't know if that's necessarily true. It's just that he's more known because they put a lot on his plate last year.
Well, there's certainly a pressure, John, that comes with a big contract. I mean, you sign a big contract versus
that part of it, but he's the kind of guy who, and you saw it last year a number of times during the season when he was joking about, why is there a Pro Bowl incentive in my contract? When he was talking about asking Vic in training camp, hey, when am I going to get to rush the passer? He's very self-deprecating. He's like, doesn't seem to affect him. Now, that's on the surface. Who knows? Money can affect anybody in a negative way, more often than not. So you have to wait and see from that standpoint. But he doesn't seem like that type of guy. He just doesn't. So I wouldn't lose sleep over that. To his point, and he did say, we're way ahead of where we were last year. He's talking about the guys that were there. I'm not talking about the guys who were there. The guys who weren't playing, the guys who were either new or being expected to step up. That's the issue. It's the guys around him. When Vic is talking about, well, right, where are you going to play Cooper DeJean? Well, it depends on the other guys. Where are you going to play Zack Baun? Well, it depends on the other guys. Same answer.
Do you expect a different role, though, for him this year? Like maybe more of those hybrid packages? Maybe, we've heard about him working with Jeremiah Washburn a little bit. Do you think Zack has a wider scope of responsibility this year, for lack of a better word for it?
Well, if he's playing middle linebacker, he does. But that depends on the other guys. Okay. Is Campbell going to be ready? Is Jeremiah Trotter going to be ready? When is Nakobe Dean going to be back? So that will affect him, especially early in the season. as far as those hybrid roles, I think that has more to do with Baun and Campbell together. So again, depends on when they can get Campbell up to speed, not only on the field, but understanding the scheme and things like that more than Zack. And then I think you'll see it develop probably later in the season a little bit. And certainly by next year, by 2026, I think that's the plan. But this season, again, it's about, you're not a movie guy, but it's about Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. It's the other guys. It's not Zack and Cooper.
How does his leadership role change this year? Remember, you lost Brandon Graham, you lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you lose Darius Slay, and now you look at the starting lineup, and boy, you got some youth there. Zack is kind of the old head in the room. He's the unk, if you will, John. How's his leadership role change? I don't know how much stock you put into that, but I certainly think it's important. How does that shift coming into this season?
I mean, it's important and it's overrated. It's both. Last year there was big concern. You're not going to find a better leader than Jason Kelce. They lost Jason Kelce and they won the Super Bowl. So when I say it's a little bit overrated, that's what I mean. Not that it's not important. You don't want a bunch of, I think you see the chemistry of the Eagles and what Nick Sirianni, probably his strength, getting people on the same page. And part of that is the locker room policing themselves, so to speak. But again, I've mentioned, people have asked me, it's Reed in the secondary, it's Jordan Davis up front, it's Nakobe Dean at linebacker are the leaders of the defense. And really Nakobe is the quarterback of the defense when he's healthy and when he's out there. Now, Zack took over that role in the playoffs and everything was fine. And he can certainly do it from a trait standpoint. But as far as leadership, it's going to be Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Reed Blankenship.
Some youthful leaders, but in good shape. We'll see how it all shakes out. We're going to keep rolling down our list here on Birds 365. So Zack Baun comes in at number 11. John, quick note before we get to number 10. Did you happen to see what Bryce Huff said? I knew in training camp it wouldn't work out with the Eagles. He was looking for a trade pretty early on, Johnny Mac. I guess it really was that how we signed Bryce, obviously with the need for a pass rusher, and Vic Fangio just didn't want that type of player. I mean, that's how I'm reading it. I don't know what you think of it.
Well, when things go wrong, there's a lot of revision on both sides, I think. So in the moment, being there, it was clear that Vic was trying to teach Bryce some new things, some new ways of doing things, and it wasn't coming easy for him. And then from the standpoint of the frustration, and then the injuries happen. But I think that's revision. That I knew in training camp.
I'll give you the quote. I don't know if you.
No, I know what he said.
Yeah, I don't want people to. I mean, he kind of said that, but let me just read for the people who are listening. He said, "There's a plethora of things that went down. I don't want to get into specifics. Being in the league for 5 years, I kind of knew what it felt like for me to be in a good situation. I got to look out for myself and do what I think is best. I kind of knew where it was headed fairly early on into the season, probably even training camp, if I'm being honest. So when everything popped off, it was just like, yeah, all right, let's get to work." So that was Bryce Huff's comment. I don't think it was a bad comment by any means, but
I think obviously it didn't work out. Obviously he's frustrated. Obviously he wants to spin things in a positive fashion. No doubt. We talked about it on the show. He's used incorrectly, from Big's standpoint. The argument would be, well, I'm trying to get him to be a more well-rounded player. I'm trying to make him better.
And we're not building a defense that needs Bryce Huff to thrive. The defense was the number 1 overall in football last year. So the defense thrived. Vic did his job.
Oh, yeah.
Huff just didn't work within it.
No, yeah. And you know, from the standpoint of the idea that Vic can't utilize good pass rushers is just blown up by his history. I mean, he's had good pass rushers all over the place. In his career, some of the best ever during specific seasons. So that's nonsense. But from the standpoint of, I always compare it to Fletcher Cox. Look, Fletcher hated the move from Jim Schwartz to Jonathan Gannon early the first year, 2021. And that's because he became a great player in the old school labeling purposes only, 4-3 attack, play the run on the way to the quarterback. That's what Jim Schwartz was. Bryce Huff would probably be good in that. That's why he's happy to be back with Robert Saleh, him on the edge, wide 9. That's what he wants to do. That's what and that's two things. It's a lot more fun for defensive linemen, number one. And number two, again, problem with the NFL. How do they pay these people? How did he get that $51 million?
Sacks.
And that's a league problem. So from his standpoint, I think when you hear an edge rusher verbalize, you know, I got to get mine essentially. You know, they're sort of like receivers in that standpoint. They all believe that because they all know what they're getting paid on. Like nobody's paying. We're all talking about Trey Hendrickson. What's he going to get? $35 million. What's TJ Watt going to get? Nobody's talking about getting $40 million for setting the edge, even though it's very important.
Right.
Certainly very important for Vic Fangio.
Probably more important, as illustrated by last year's defense, where their top sack guy and the number 1 overall defense in football was 8.5.
Yeah. So it's a difficult sort of path to navigate. And, you know, the industry itself creates some of these problems by the way they pay players. There's no law. Like we and I've talked about it a million times about Cooper DeJean. Well, how can you keep him in the slot long term? All fans are like, well, he played great in the slot. Keep him in the slot. Well, the difference is $50 million. If you're one of the best outside cornerbacks versus one of the best inside cornerbacks.
$50 million this year, John, means $75 million when Cooper gets to the table.
Potentially. Certainly more, probably not that much, but certainly more. So that's really part of the industry. Now, there's no law that says the Eagles can't say, you know what, this guy's different. We're going to pay him this because he's valuable to us. But teams just don't work that way. So they create their own problems sometimes. And yeah, same as receivers. Receivers want the ball. Edge rushers want to rush the quarterback.
No doubt about it. There you go. There's your commentary. Bryce Huff made those comments. So honestly, I wish the guy luck. You got a Super Bowl ring here in Philly, but obviously it didn't work out. And I wish him the best of luck. I got no ill will toward him. It just didn't work out in Philly, and we prevailed anyway. So why hate the guy? It's one thing if we stunk. It's one thing if we needed an edge rusher to win the Super Bowl and we didn't have it. We were good. I mean, I'm not going to hold a grudge against the guy. It's not his fault that they paid him $18 million a year. You would all take that deal. I know you would if it was offered to you.
Yeah, nobody's turning that down. Yeah,
right. So no issue with Bryce Huff, but I do wish him the best of luck. And I'll see you later, Bryce Huff. We'll take our commercial break. When we get back, we got number 10 on the top 10 and 9. We got 10 and 9 coming up on the top 25 list. How did Zack Baun fall to 11? Come on, Eddie Kratz. We'll talk to Kratzy soon about that one. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Don't forget to hit the like button on the show. It's one of the best things you can do to help us grow. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back in 3 minutes on Birds 365.